Hello and welcome to the Soul Shaking Love podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Green from CoachValerieGreen.com. And this show interviews the best experts in mind, body, and spirit connection, both with yourself and your partner. And so today I am thrilled to have Alison Armstrong on the show. Hello, Alison.
Hello, glad to be here.
Yes, and many of you know Alison, I'm sure, because in the relationship world, she's a household name. And I'll tell you a little bit about her before we dive in, because she really has been researching men and women and relationships since 1991 and has a lot of prolific research that really helps us understand for men and women how we act according to our instincts and wind up sabotaging getting what we want and bringing out the worst in each other. And that's really what she set out to research. And she has done such prolific research and has books and programs and online courses. I've done many of them, and I wind up quoting her a lot with my clients. So I really am just thrilled to have her on the show. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes. And so today I figured, of course, we might jump around, but I figured we can really focus on, and this is what a lot of my clients ask me about, is how do women act in a way that makes men feel disrespected or unsafe, or i.e. self-protective, rather than feeling motivated to give us what we need. And in fact, he thinks that what we need is obvious and we're not giving it because we don't care. My husband's actually said he thought that before. Like we were stuck in a misunderstanding around that for a while until we cleared that up. But we don't know we're doing it. We think we are being respectful, and it sabotages us from getting our needs met. So how do we understand that and then act in a way that actually helps him to be naturally motivated to give us what we need?
Okay,
So
well,
that's the topic, but yes.
it's a big one. I spent so much time on it, and I'll see if I can break it down in the time allotted. So the first thing, when I started studying men, it was obvious I was bringing out the worst in them. A colleague of mine was called a frog farmer.
Yes,
and
I love that term.
Myself, someone who turns princes into frogs. But I didn't know how I was bringing out the worst in them because I was so normal. I was so ordinary. And so if you wanted to get to the heart of the matter, we would be talking about safety and security. And that men and women literally have opposing instincts. Yep. So we're not just opposite sex, like someone's got an innie and an outie. We go about things in an opposite way. And so, for example, most women experience being safe when they feel connected.
Right.
And our greatest access to connection is attention and interest. So good kind of attention and a good kind of interest. And most men, and they wouldn't say safe, they would say secure, experience being secure when they're producing results.
Yep.
That committed state of mind that comes with testosterone and a result or a goal or a destination that they are committed to. And their greatest access to producing results is trust and respect. So if they don't have trust and respect, they can only produce the results on their own. They can't partner. They won't be invited to be on a team. They won't get to go on the big hunt. They're just left alone chasing bunny rabbits on their own. So this conflict between connection and productivity shows up in that attention and interest and trust and respect. Because, for example, when a woman feels disconnected, like I haven't heard from him in an allotted amount of time, which could be a very short amount of time in a man's world. Gosh, we just talked this morning.
Right, exactly.
Right. Or we talked yesterday, we talked last week, depending on the context, because
Right.
this is just romantic. But what she'll do is she'll interrupt him to get connection,
Right.
not knowing that that interruption, given the way his mind works, which is on a track, screening out everything considered irrelevant to the result he's producing. So
right. You call that single focus.
I do. Yeah. Not, well, they actually would just kept saying, I'm focused. I'm focused.
Right. Exactly. And it's true.
It is true. And so, but what happens is, so our efforts to connect will interrupt their productivity. And often the way that we do it is in a way of either you should have connected with me already. What's wrong with you that you haven't? What's wrong with me that you haven't? And no regard for what we interrupted. So this is the place that we show the most disrespect, is we interrupt without even saying, I'm sorry to interrupt. We interrupt as if what they're doing is stupid, as if what they're doing doesn't count. And even if they're, watching a ball game on television, we'll interrupt.
Or maybe especially.
Yeah.
Like the things we don't think are important.
Exactly. And there are many things in a man's world that we don't think is important, including his job is not more important than our relationship. But from his point of view, he's got to be productive in order to provide for himself and for you. And if you keep interrupting his productivity now, which is how he provides, now he's got to protect himself from you in order to provide for you. And it makes them feel like they have to battle to be themselves and do what they consider their jobs.
Right.
And so we'll interrupt in order to connect. Their reaction to that interruption causes a bigger disconnect.
Right.
And then we're just spinning out.
Right. It's a cycle.
Yeah. And I call it a downward spiral, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And it's just because we don't know his brain works differently than ours. And we also we don't recognize when men are trying to connect with us, because our access to connection is attention and interest. So if you're asking me questions about me, like, so how are you? Or I taught my boyfriend to ask, is there anything you want me to know about you? And so that curiosity, which comes from the Greek word to care, oh, he cares about me. Well, to a man, questions are, I asked a room full of so many men, how many questions does it take to make an interrogation? They all went like this.
Wow.
They hate being asked questions. Questions to them is not good attention. So they don't.
He feels like put on the spot.
Questions, yeah. So they don't ask us questions, which would be our good attention.
Right. I
tell men to find out from the women who are important to them, what are your favorite questions?
Yes.
And so a man is trying to connect by telling you about himself. So he's sharing, he's revealing, he's telling you about something he's thinking about or worried about or anxious about. And he'll be in the middle of trying to connect with us, and we'll get distracted because the water's boiling over, or someone texts us on our phone, and, or the doorbell rings or the child cries out, and we'll get pulled in that direction. And to him, that was a conscious decision that those things are more important than him. That's how he interprets it, because they don't understand what estrogen does to our brain. They don't understand how we live in a state of distraction. We don't we don't multitask because it's fun. We multitask because we're pulled in so many directions at one time.
Right. So we're not disrespecting him. We're not uninterested.
We don't mean to. So, one of the things we teach in our Understanding Women course, first for women to understand what happens and for men to understand what happens, and that if you touch her If you touch her, you become the loudest thing in her environment. So when you want to tell her something important to you, take a bit of time and say, there's something important I want to tell you about. Is there anything you need to close, shut down, turn off, or put away so you can listen? And then she'll look around and she'll do some things to quiet her environment. Okay, now I can listen to you. And then, but keep holding your hand. Do you need to turn off your phone? Is there anybody you need to reach out to first? Because we literally, and it's our impulse, we have to clear the decks in order to do one thing. Yes. And so allowing for that, when like, honey, what I really want to do is make love to you. And I'd start with your toes. That is a way better invitation than you want to do it.
I'm sure all the watchers and listeners are giggling with that.
Exactly. So in order for you to be able to receive all the pleasure I'd like to provide, is there anything you need to take care of first so you're not wondering or worrying about it? And wait and let her think, well, I'm grungy, so I need to take a shower or I'll be really self-conscious about that. And I promise I call my sister back. So I'll text her and tell her it's gonna be an hour or more. I hope. And so there's ways we can help each other
exactly.
have more profound connections. One is by, honey, when would be a good time to ask you some questions so I get information in order to plan our trip, right? Set up a time so he's prepared to express his preferences or needs. So there's a lot of setup required because what we do impulsively is going to throw the other person off most of the time.
Right. And we don't understand that because most women, as you said, are used to with that diffuse awareness. We're used to being impulsive and also having a lot of balls in the air and keeping them spinning. And a lot of us have gotten good at that. And we don't understand why he doesn't get that. That doesn't mean we're not listening to him or that we're not still paying attention, but he doesn't because he can't do that. And he needs us to listen so that and not interrupt him, as you say, right? Because he needs time to go deeper into himself because he's not necessarily going deep into himself because he's going deep into his work. And so when you ask him, that's his opportunity. Or, I mean, when he feels prepared is what I mean.
Yeah, or to
feels interrogated.
About it. Yeah, it's good to let them know there's things I would love to know about you. But the other thing, Valerie, is the only time I have heard men use the word safe, I don't feel safe, is when talking with the woman in their life.
I know. And it's like the opposite for us. So it's hard for us to understand.
Well, that's the word that's the only time the rest of the time it's secure. The only time they say safe, she's not safe to talk to, or to me, thousands, you're so safe to talk to. And we have to watch this because what makes us not safe to talk to, one is we'll interrupt when they're saying something important and we'll redirect from our world. We'll get anxious, right? And we'll interrupt with, but what about me? Or how does that going to affect me? Right? Or what I think about it, which has a lot to do with the way that we listen, which we work on in the course we have called Lux. I don't know if you've done Lux online.
Not Lux, the Queen's Code. So, but I think you explain it in there a little bit too.
Lux is where we go after this the most, and it's really important. It's basically the retrofitted foundation of 30 years of work. And,
amazing. So please explain it in 5 minutes. Just kidding.
Well, Lux stands for Liberation, Understanding, and Extraordinary Relationships. And in less than 8 hours, it breaks down the only 3 things that we really actually can affect in my assessment. And it's how are we being, how are we listening, and what are we speaking for? What is the purpose of our speaking? And Lux takes us through what we call a process of honoring. And it's really, how do you show respect? to
Right.
each other. And it's like a ladder that has a curve in it. And then it can be like, one of the steps is understanding. And so we can listen to understand people, and we can speak to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
But neither is natural for human beings.
Right.
We speak either to be dominant or attractive, or purposely concealing what we think will be used against us. We rarely speak to be seen.
Yeah, or just to vent, without necessarily having a more focused intention.
Yeah. Oh, all the time. And women are driven to speak blah, 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 to feel safe.
Right.
And we call it Chew the Critters in our Understanding Women course. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also evidence, if a woman talks for half an hour, she'll end up with a flood of serotonin. It's as if she went for a run, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but what has women be unsafe to talk to, there's interrupting, there's thinking that we are holding them to account. Why do you think that? What do you think that for? You shouldn't think that. That's going to shut him up. And then the last and one of the worst that will put an end to everything is when she uses what he says against him. Like, well, you say that you love me, you say that you respect me, therefore. So we use it to manipulate them. And then the other thing, the other way we use it is we reveal what he said to other people to show them what a high regard he has for us. He told me this. So like how intimate we are, that he revealed this to me. Well, he revealed it to you. He didn't reveal it to her. And if you tell it to her, that's the end of his revelations.
Right.
They hate that. And I hate that.
Yeah, because then he doesn't feel safe that his privacy will be respected.
But it's huge. He is a warrior. His default is to conceal everything that can be used against him.
Right.
Which is why it's so hard to find out what men need, because first of all, they think that a need is a weakness in the first place. So they don't reveal weakness, it'll be used against them. And they do think their needs are obvious. They think they're simple and their needs are obvious. It's not true. And they think, this is interesting about it, they think that what a woman is already providing is all she's going to provide.
Right.
That's what she's willing to provide. That's what she naturally provides. So they think there's no point in asking her for something else. And in some cases, they think it's dishonorable to ask for something else because they'd be asking her to change.
Right.
Now, we ask men to change all the time. We don't think there's any dishonor in that. But it is dishonoring.
It's more dishonoring from a man's perspective.
Yeah. Being accepted as they are, it's love. It's love and respect. And we don't work very hard at it. And we talk about this in our course, Understanding Love and Commitment. Men commit but like a scoop. They just like scoop her all up, everything she is and everything she isn't.
Right.
And women commit one acceptance at a time. And I know women who've had a wedding ceremony 30 years ago and haven't accepted hardly anything about their husband. They still haven't committed. Acceptance is a very, very powerful process for a woman.
Right.
And item by item, and we have to examine everything for, can I accept this without sacrificing who I am? And is there anything I need in order to accept this? Like, I can accept this about you if we have this agreement. I can accept that you are going to cuss out your computer at high volume with words and energy that's going to rattle my limbic nervous system. I can accept that about you if you can accept I'm going to leave the house.
Right. That's just taking care of yourself.
Yeah, if we have a deal about that, then you don't have to change that. But if you expect me to stick around while you do it, this is a no-go. Deal breaker.
Exactly. Yeah, I love how in many of your courses you teach how to really create partnership like that, how to create deals together so that both of your needs get met, how to create these win-win solutions. Because once you understand what motivates us differently, then you can actually reveal what you need in order to feel safe and secure, and for men to feel respected and for us to feel loved. I mean, I think that the way we talk about it is in those words, but obviously all human beings have the same needs. But women would say, I need to feel loved, I need to feel protected, I need to feel taken care of. And men would say they need to feel appreciated and respected and etc. Right. I mean, do you have anything more that you want to say about how they talk about it?
Well, where we can connect or are the same the most is, as you know, what I would call human spirit.
Right.
So in the prefrontal cortex of our brain, those conscious choices that we make would include the crown chakra, right? So our own brain's higher consciousness and access to higher consciousness is where we're going to find that we have similar values, like intimacy, being seen, seeing the other, being safe with each other, even adored.
Yes.
And which means to hold in the highest esteem.
Yeah.
And it's at the instinctual level that we have the conflicts, that we're usually literally opposites. And since we don't expect the other to be opposite and go like, no, I need to learn you. And today's the 3-year anniversary of my boyfriend and I committing to an exclusive exploration of who we can be for each other. And
today?
Yeah, today. Yeah.
Oh, well, congratulations on a 3-year anniversary of that level of commitment, because that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. And we've never committed to more than that, although we have a lot of plans and potentials and we have a lot of agreements, but it works for us.
Yeah. I love that, because
we'll probably never get married. We're just now talking about living together sometime in the future. We don't know how far off it is. But how come I brought it up is because unbeknownst to me, until I experienced it a couple weeks later, he set out to learn me. And I'd never had that experience before, especially out loud, set out to learn me. Yeah. And he was driving and I was scared because seemed like he was really close to the white line on the right side. And there was a ditch next to us. We were driving from my house in the country. And I was trying to figure out a way to say it, a way to have it change, but not be critical and not, I mean, I was just trying for the life of me how to say this right. And I don't even remember how I said it, but his response was, that sounds like criticism. And I stopped taking that a long time ago. And I burst into tears, right? The Alison Armstrong, right? Man, right? And I, as I'm crying, I'm trying to figure out what was it? And I was like, I'm so sorry. I was scared. And then I hear him. He's got his hands on the steering wheel and he's tapping. It's going pretty slow because he drives really safe, and he's tapping. When she sounds like that, she's scared. When she sounds like that, she's scared. When she sounds like that, she's scared. He was memorizing, and I could hear it. And he's like, okay, so you were scared. How about the next time that happens? Not if it ever happens, right? How about the next time you sound like that? I remember that you're scared and I asked what you're scared of. And
Wow.
and I laughed and I said, well, I think in pretty short order, you're going to figure out the few things that scare me because you're quick. And he laughed. I said, how about instead, I just say I'm scared? How about I
Yeah,
just
because
add to it and say I'm scared? It's like, well, that would be good. And it was months later. He was in the middle of talking about something. He was all involved in it. And he was following another car very closely. And I was trying to figure out how to tell him not to do that. And all the reasons why tailgating, it does.
oh my God, I
And then I'm like, and then I caught
totally
myself.
do that too, of course. Yes.
Right. I caught myself and I said, I'm scared you're too close to that car. And he just backed off. I went, oh, thanks, and kept talking. Like it was just, I owned it.
Yep. Such a beautiful.
And he could fix it. He could protect me from being scared without any skin off his back. And that's the thing we've got to watch for is, as women, we criticize in order to change someone's behavior.
Right.
And we expect it to work. And when it doesn't work, we're mystified, right?
Well, right, because sometimes, and we have to be honest with ourselves, sometimes it does work with us. And so that's one of the reasons we don't realize that it never works with them, like never.
Yeah, it almost always works with women. Criticism, even like, why don't you bring me flowers anymore?
Right.
She'll bring you flowers, even if she resents bringing you flowers. She's gonna. We think we survive by pleasing, so all a man has to do is make a little comment, and we're going to adapt to it. And we can kill ourselves over it, which is why I am very big on verify and clarify.
Yes,
I perceived, it seems like you didn't like that. And so I've already tried to change it. Do you need me to change that?
Yes, that's a very good example.
Ask him. There's so many things women are changing about themselves that they don't notice because they never cared in the first place because we misinterpreted their reaction.
Right.
Or there's things that they would like, don't spend a big effort on that. It's not a big deal, right? Or, wow, you're working on changing that. I'm touched by that. That would make a big difference.
Right.
Like, find out what's bang for your buck. And the only way we're going to find out is asking each other.
Exactly. Asking him when his attention is present, right? Because I think that you did a great job of explaining how men are single focus. And I think, and how when they're interrupted, or either through explaining things to us or with something else they were already doing, then they don't want to answer our questions. It feels like an interrogation unless we're like, hey, I'd really like to learn this about you, or I'd really like to know how to, what I can do that would make a difference for you. Or, hey, that explain and clarify, like you just said, he needs to actually be in a space where he can answer.
I wouldn't say explain.
Sorry.
Yeah, I would just because first there's that term mansplaining.
Oh my God, yes.
Which is another kind of baloney. Right. And we listen. Men have been trying to explain themselves to us for millennia. But when we think that they're a hairy woman, we hear their explanations as a poor excuse for bad behavior.
Right.
We don't think they're telling us the truth about who they are.
Yeah, which is what they think they're doing.
Yeah, they're trying to.
Exactly.
They're trying to have us understand them.
But we don't know how to do that. We interrupt them like I'm doing right now, right?
And we misinterpret it. And so it's so what I said, and I use words really carefully: verify and clarify.
Got it. Yes.
And verify as in, is did I perceive accurately, right? Verify comes from the words that means truth. So, and the best way to do it is say, it seems like.
Right.
Mostly what we do is we tell men what's true. You did that because you disrespect me.
Right. And then he feels disrespected like, when you say it like that.
What? Right? And it gets worse. Or,
right.
But if you say it seems like you did what you just did, and it seems like you did it because you disrespect me. So could you tell me why you really did it and clarify? And if we say, it seems like you don't love me, it seems like you don't care about me, it seems like you don't respect me, their response is, oh my gosh, what makes it seem that way? And then they'll act on what has it seem that way. If we say, you don't love me, you don't care about me, you don't respect me, or even worse, I feel you don't love me, I feel you don't care about me, and I feel you don't disrespect me, there's nothing they can do with it. They're slumped. Their attitude, because they always have the worth it calculation, is it, don't waste any breath on this. It's not worth it.
Well, because he doesn't feel understood in the first place. So then he doesn't think that he'll win the game of being understood by putting more effort in.
Well, there's that. And he's stunned that you could interpret him that way. He's crushed that you would think that about him, given everything he does for you and doesn't do on purpose for you, all things he's not doing in order to be with you or take care of you.
Right. Like all the ways he does love you feel unseen, which is why he usually gets defensive if he says anything. But don't you understand? I do this and this and this and this to show I love you. Right. And then we're arguing about it instead of getting our needs met.
Yes.
So that's what not to do.
It's common to not get our needs met. It's even, I mean, when I started studying men, I was sure they either didn't care about what you needed, or they were actively withholding it in order to get you. Well, turns out I was actively withholding what my first husband needed. I didn't start studying men until we've been divorced for several years, but I actively withheld what he needed in order to punish him for all the things that I needed that he wasn't giving me, not knowing that my way of going about getting what I needed, which was to complain about what he didn't do, didn't give him the juice, the motivation, the inclination to do it.
Yes.
And
I just love the way you explain that so simply.
Yeah, in our Understanding Men course, which was originally called Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. And then it was called the Queen's Code Workshop after we published the Queen's Code book. But all of our customers from the very beginning have called it the Understanding Men course.
Right.
Finally just decided to call it what they call it. Understanding Men.
Yes.
But it's one of the things that we teach in there is about the worth it calculation. And men can't not be calculating the expenditure of time, energy, resources, and also what could they be spending that time, energy, and resources on if they weren't doing the thing we're asking them to do.
Right.
So their return on investment, their ROI, break even is not worth doing. And if you think about it instinctually, if you only have enough food, you break even on the hunt and you have enough food, you're going to die. You have no excess for emergencies, right?
Right.
So they have to come out ahead. They have to come out ahead, and not just a little ahead, for something to be worth doing.
Right. It's their survival instinct.
It is. And doing something in order that we not complain about it is not worth doing.
Yes. And
to just come out even, to come out at zero, not worth doing.
Yep. And you do explain that extremely well in that workshop. Because I know I could ask you more questions about that. And I think it would be probably more helpful to talk more about what to do instead that does bring out his human spirit. And you said some wonderful things in the stories that you just shared. So, I mean, I can start out by highlighting those, but, like that incident in the car, which is such a beautiful example of the difference between criticism versus being vulnerable and just sharing how we feel. And you didn't know you were sounding like criticism.
Right. Just tell your truth. Well, if I could finish what I was talking about before. So I thought they didn't care about what we needed, or they were actively withholding it. And then I found out that they do care about what we need. They want us to have what we need. How much they care about providing it for us depends on the kind of attraction they experience towards us, which is true for the lifetime of a relationship from the very beginning. And 50 years later, their motivation comes from the kind of attraction they experience. We talk about that in the Making Sense of Men book.
Which is a really great little introduction.
It's one of the most important things for women to understand, because we incite the most primitive attraction in men and then have the results of it and think men are bad people, not knowing what we have to do with it. So there's those things. And then there's also, once I found out they want us to have what we need, then realizing they don't already know it because they're different. And so we have to tell them. And then that left a woman with the problem, but what if I don't know what I need? And then, so that's where the Being Extraordinary as a Woman course got born from, is figuring out what you need and why in a very powerful way that's connected to your higher self.
Yes. And what it provides for you.
To embody that. What?
And what it provides for you.
Exactly. But then what came up for our graduates was they knew all that and they figured out what they needed. But as one woman, she said, I just can't get past what I think of myself for needing it. And so then there's this whole thing we have to pay attention to of our own opinion of what we need. And that we usually only ask when we think we deserve something. And when we think we deserve something, we don't ask, we demand. If I deserve it, I've already earned it and you owe me. And then that puts a man off, because now you're saying you'll get out of debt with me, which is another zero, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to deal with all of these things just to get to the place where we can actually ask.
Right. To make a clear request for what we actually want and what, as I said, it provides for us, because you do a really good job of explaining that if you tell a man what to do, he'll feel controlled. But if you tell him what you want, why you want it, and what it provides for you, he wants to provide that experience for you. Maybe he'll want to provide it in a different way. And that's what the, making an agreement it can be about. But if you criticize him, then he'll feel disrespected, versus if you actually ask. And you do a really great job of explaining how to ask, especially in your A Great Ask course, I believe is.
I'm glad you did that one. So mostly that was right. What you need, which includes what it would look like when he would do that, what elements it would include. Like I had to teach my husband how to snuggle. He'd stopped snuggling. He'd been an amazing snuggler for 25 years, and then he stopped snuggling. And I was like, how come you don't snuggle anymore? And he said, I can't give you a back rub every night. He was a body worker. He would rub my back at night and morning. It was amazing. And I'm like, that snuggling isn't just rubbing my back. You see, it's not. So I literally pushed him down on the bed and demonstrated all these different ways to snuggle. He was
That
shocked.
is so sweet.
But then that counts. Lying next to me and crossing ankles. That's snuggling.
Yeah, like he didn't realize that he didn't have to do any work, just like melt into it. That's so sweet.
Yeah, so looks like matters. What it will provide for you matters, but the why you need it, most women will go to the past.
Right.
Justify the need because of something that's happened in the past, some injury, wound, disrespect, self-consciousness, they made me feel, right?
Right.
Men are not motivated by the past. That's why you say what it will provide, because the providing is in the future and they want to affect the future.
Exactly.
And too often women try to get what they need from a man by convincing him they have a good reason for needing it.
Right.
And that doesn't matter to him as much as the impact of getting it does.
Right. Like, how are you going to feel and what's that going to allow you to be, do, and have personally?
Yeah. And to be trustworthy, you then have to demonstrate it.
Right. Then you have to be, obviously that doesn't mean you have to be happy, but it's like, thank you. This feels really good. And, acknowledge what he is providing before you ask for more or it to be different, right? Because he is trying to make you happy.
Yes, happy's a tricky one that I'm not going to try to do here.
Sure. Or he's trying to. Yes.
But what I mean is, for example, for men, if you ask him to be in charge of putting the kids to bed because you're tired and impatient at that time of night, and if you went to bed earlier, then you would be a better person the next day. You would be patient, you could be playful, you could be compassionate and loving. Well, that all sounds good to him until he takes over putting the kids to bed at night and you don't go to bed. That instead you're cleaning or fixing something or engrossed in a book when he thinks, shouldn't you be asleep by now? Because he does, and you have to zone out before you can go to sleep, so you'd have to have that be part of it. So if you put the kids to bed, I could start the zone out time I need, which is the beginning of the sleep slide.
Right. That's explaining what it looks like. So he understands.
Yeah. And then you got to do what you said, and you can make adjustments. Can we check back in about that? I realized that by what you provided, I saw that I don't need this part, but I need this other part. So you can keep making adjustments in partnership, can refine it, but you have to interact like you made a promise, like you gave your word to something. If he does X, you'll do Y. Otherwise, he'll stop doing it.
Well, right. Because that, then he makes that equation of effectiveness. Like, then it's not going to work if you're not going to do what you said you were going to do. Also, I think what's important that you demonstrated there is that you acknowledged what he did provide before you asked for it to be different. Because otherwise he doesn't feel seen for what he already did. And so then why does it make sense to keep doing more if you're not going to see what he's doing?
And more than seen, he needs to be appreciated for it.
Exactly.
Thank you for doing that for me.
Yeah.
Take it personally.
Exactly. Because that is why he's doing it. Assuming it's a romantic relationship, but even in a work context, work relationships are personal. Not romantic, but personal. Like, he's doing it obviously because it needs to get done. And you also feel supported in a work context. He's being a good business partner in that way.
Yeah, it can go a lot of ways. There are things that a man will do in order to produce a result at work. And there are things he will do that won't conflict with producing a result, but he does it to put a smile on that person's face.
Yes, exactly.
Or he does it to make it easier for her as a way of showing that he appreciates what she does.
Exactly.
All the machines that men have invented
I know.
to make women's lives easier.
Exactly. We could talk a lot about that. The one way that the one how-to that I think a lot of women would want to ask you, if we could just ask one more question, is, you've done a really good job of explaining how to ask men, to provide us with a specific thing that we need, or to listen to us, or to how to actually get him to open up, and how to, get his time and attention in a way where, he doesn't feel interrogated or upset for asking or disrespected. The one thing that I get asked the most is, when my feelings are hurt, how do I ask him to listen to my feelings without him getting defensive or trying to fix the problem? And I know you share a lot about that in your books and courses too. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it here.
I can't answer it in such a short amount of time.
It's true.
But I would say he does want to fix it. So tell him how to fix it. Tell him to say the magic words. I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings.
Right.
If he has to listen to all about your feelings, in not knowing that there's what to do, it just occurs like torture.
Right.
So like in Understanding Women, it's the last session, because there's so much to understand about women before what our feelings mean to us and what it's like for them to be hurt. And that even though most of the responsibility is ours for how we interpreted what they did is what really hurt our feelings. And then they're crushed that we would interpret it them that way.
Right.
That we really need them to save us from our worst enemy, from
Right.
our most frightening experience, where we're cut off from ourselves and our connection to the eternal by our feelings being hurt.
Yeah.
And that if a man or a woman can say, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings, and own it, even if they don't understand how they did it, which is why men have so much trouble saying those words.
Right. Because
it seems like it's a lie and it's illogical. It's both things. It's not true and it's illogical. How can I say that? And I make a very good case for saying it anyway. And I'm not going to try to do that in a couple minutes.
Oh, I agree. I think I actually did listen to the Understand Women course, and you do a great job at explaining it there. So if people want to hear more, because basically it is about men understanding why our feelings got hurt. And you do a great job of explaining it in the book so that we don't have to explain it, because we hate explaining it. We can't explain it in the moment. And then we just feel frustrated that we should have to explain it when all we need him to say is, I'm sorry. And he's just like, I need to understand why in order to say I'm sorry. Otherwise it's not authentic. Right. Anyway, so yes, you do a really good job of explaining that to men in the Understand Women course. So maybe it's just about getting him to do that course. Just kidding. But yeah,
it's really helpful. But if someone wants to know what we're dealing with, a man or a woman, go to YouTube and put in Alison Armstrong Rage Monster. And you will see it from many years ago, almost 20 years ago, me demonstrating my kind of rage monster. Many women have my kind of rage monster, and some have a freeze kind of rage monster. So nothing will come out of the mouth, instead of like me, a bunch of F-bombs.
Right.
But I'm due someplace else. Thank you for having me. And
yes. And so all your programs can be found at your website, or AlisonArmstrong.com. And
Yes.
what you just said is the rage monster is the tag, because you do a really good job of explaining that. And I love your explanation. So thank you so much for being on the show. I think that you answered so many questions that'll help my audience, and, you know, hopefully inspire others about your work. So I am just thrilled, and thank you so much. And I hope you have a really love and self-love filled day.
Thank you. And you're welcome. Okay, take care.
Take care.